Picture a world without a single screen in your pocket. No internet, no instant photos, no glowing glass rectangles.
It feels like 1,000 years ago, but it was actually just a few decades. The story I am about to tell you is not about cold metal and plastic circuits. It is a grand adventure about how humanity learned to shrink the power of a giant room into a small box on your desk. It is the story of a digital revolution that started with a whisper and ended with a roar. Let us go back to the beginning and follow the path from the humble XT to the mighty Pentium 3. This is the odyssey of the personal computer. In the early 1980s, a new king was born. It was called the IBM Personal Computer XT, which stood for Extended Technology. Before this machine, computers were things only scientists or big banks owned. But the XT changed everything. It was a heavy, beige monster that sat on your desk like a piece of office furniture. Inside, it had a chip called the 8088, running at a speed of 4.77 MHz. To us today, that sounds slower than a turtle. But back then, it was like owning a piece of the future. As the mid-80s arrived, the world was ready for more power. In 1984, AT was released. The T stood for Advanced Technology, and it was a massive leap forward. Inside was the Intel 80286 processor. This was a 16-bit chip, which meant it could process twice as much information at once compared to the old XT. It eventually reached speeds of 20 MHz. It was the first time a personal computer felt truly fast. It was like moving from a bicycle to a motorcycle. Why did 16 bits matter? It was not just about speed, it was about memory. The old XT could only see 640 kilobytes of memory. The 286 could see 16 megabytes. This was an astronomical difference. It meant programmers could finally write larger, more complex software. This was the era where the first versions of Windows started to appear. They were simple, but the idea of using a mouse to click on things was starting to take hold. With the AT came the revolution of color. We moved from monochrome to EGA graphics. Suddenly, we had 16 colors on the screen at the same time. Seeing a sky that was actually blue and grass that was actually green on a computer screen was a miracle. Games began to look like real art. You could see the red of a character's shirt or the blue of a digital ocean. It changed the way we felt about our machines. They were becoming windows into other worlds. By 1985, a true legend arrived, the Intel 80386. If the 286 was a motorcycle, the 386 was a jet engine. This chip was so advanced that it stayed relevant for nearly a decade. It introduced a feature called protected mode, which allowed the computer to run multiple programs at the same time without them crashing. This was the birth of true multitasking. The 386 was the engine that made Microsoft Windows a household name. Windows 3 needed the power of 32 bits to run properly. Suddenly, the desktop was a real place. You had icons, scroll bars, and windows you could drag around with a mouse. This made computers accessible to everyone, not just the people who knew how to type commands. It was the beginning of the user-friendly era. We learned about choice. Intel released two versions. The DX was the full-power version, expensive and fast. The SX was the budget version, a bit slower and more affordable for families. The power of the 386 allowed developers to experiment with three dimensions. We started to see flight simulators and racing games that tried to mimic the real world. They were bulky and simple, but they were three-dimensional. In 1989, the world met the 486. This was a beast of raw power. It was the first chip to pack more than 1 million transistors into a tiny space. Before the 486, if you wanted to do heavy math or engineering work, you had to buy a separate coprocessor chip. But the 486DX was a genius. It had the mass processor built right into the main chip. The 486 also introduced an internal cache. Imagine a chef in a kitchen. The 486 put a small spice rack right on the counter next to the chef. This held the most important data right where the processor needed it, saving precious time. This was also the era when computers stopped being silent. Before this, all you had was a tiny speaker that went beep. But with the 486, we started putting sound cards into our machines. Suddenly, our computers could talk. Then came the CD. One disk could hold 650 megabytes. Now we had multimedia. We had encyclopedias with real videos of lions and rockets. We had games that felt like movies. It was the era of the multimedia PC. We cannot talk about the 486 without talking about a game called Doom. When Doom arrived in 1993, it changed everything. It used every ounce of power the 486 had. It was smooth as silk. In 1993, Intel created a brand that would become world famous. They called it the Pentium. The Pentium was designed from the ground up to be a superstar. It was built for a world of high-resolution photos and digital video. The secret of the Pentium was its superscalar design. This means it could do two things at exactly the same time. While the 486 had to finish one job before starting the next, the Pentium had two parallel pipelines. Even at the same speed, it was much more powerful. All that power came with a price: heat. The Pentium was the first processor that really needed a dedicated fan to stay alive. We started to hear the constant hum of cooling fans inside our computers. It was the sound of power. In August of 1995, the Pentium found its perfect partner, Windows 95. This was the moment the modern computer era truly began. The start button and the taskbar all started here. People stood in long lines at midnight just to buy a copy. This was also the time we all went online. We listened to the screeching sound of our modems as they dialed into the internet. The Pentium was the chip that allowed us to browse the early web. We were connected to the world. We were visiting websites from across the globe. Then, in 1997, everything changed again. The Pentium 2 arrived, but it looked like nothing we had ever seen. It was not a small chip, it was a huge black cartridge. This was the era of slot 1. Intel moved the chip into this large box to keep things running at high speeds. While the Pentium 2 was the brain, we started adding muscles to our PCS with 3D accelerator cards. Cards like the legendary Voodoo 1 worked with the Pentium 2 to create graphics where digital water had ripples and light had shadows. We were living in a three-dimensional world. Not everyone could afford the expensive Pentium 2, so Intel created the Celeron. The Celeron 300A. It was the start of the overclocking craze. People would tune it to run much faster. It was like turning a family car into a racing machine for free. As the year 2000 approached, we met the final hero of our story, the Pentium 3. It arrived in 1999, just as the world was worrying about the Y2K bug. The Pentium 3 was built for the new millennium. It was designed to handle the heavy demands of a world that was now fully digital. Then came the final battle, the race to 1 GHz. 1000 MHz. It was the ultimate goal of the 20th century. Intel and AMD fought a desperate battle. In the year 2000, the barrier was finally broken. We had come from 4 MHz to 1000 MHz in less than 20 years. Think about the journey we have just taken. We started with a green screen and a floppy disk. We moved through the color revolution, the birth of 32 bits, and the magic of the Pentium. These machines were the tools that built the modern world. Every time you touch a screen today or talk to an AI, you are standing on the shoulders of these beige giants. They were the pioneers that blazed the trail through the digital wilderness. Our journey from the XT to the Pentium is over, but the story is still being written. The spirit remains the same, the desire to learn, to create, and to connect. Next time you hear the quiet hum of a computer, remember this odyssey. The future is bright, but its foundation was built of beige boxes and glowing green text. Thank you for traveling through time with me.